I'm going to advance to the next slide and just take a few moments to go over the disclaimer on the screen. I'm going to pause so that you can read it. It just covers the fact that Ashford University, a degree from Ashford University, does not lead to immediate teacher licensure in any state. So I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to go ahead and read that. Okay, and on the next slide, you will all see one more disclaimer. There will be links and websites and other links in these presentations, and we just want to make sure that you read the disclaimer on the slide regarding these. Pause for another moment. And without further ado, I can't tell you how excited I am for this. We've just worked for months on this, and we're just very excited to start off and kick off this 4th annual Ashford Early Childhood Conference. Before we get started, just take a moment. I'm going to ask you to turn off your cameras and mute your mics so that we can just give our full attention to Dr. Tisha Shipley. So without further ado, Dr. Shipley, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to give everybody just a second to mute themselves so we can get started. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. So excited to be the first presenter. So thank you so much for
Dr. Shipley, you got muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just want to tell you how excited I am. This next topic that I'm going to talk about is puppets, working with children's literature, cooking with children's literature. These are some of my favorite things that I used to do in my classroom. So I am going to tell you how I did it in a face-to-face presentation also. So I will go back and forth. And I had to pick some of my very favorites because there's too many to talk about, and I know that you all share great ones also. But the first thing that I want you to do is grab a few pieces of paper, and it can be any paper that you have laying around. It can be notebook paper, it can be computer paper. I want to do a make and take with you just real quick that you can keep your notes in. So you can grab 2, 3, 4 pieces, but you need more than one piece. If you will grab those really quick with me, I'm going to do a quick make and take that you can do with the students in your classroom, and we are going to do here today so that you can take notes. I have plain computer paper, but I also have just some writing paper here if that's all you've got. Just grab something, just so that you'll remember. So you're going to fold hamburger, which is the short way. So as you do this, you would teach your students the different vocabulary. So we are going to talk about this part of the book, right? Okay, so you are going to make tears all the way down the spine of the book, all the way down about 1 inch apart. And this is going to work on fine motor. This is working on children following directions. So you've made all of these tears all the way down. I'm going to give you just a second to do that with me. So you can see that I've made tears about 1 inch apart. My students loved making these books. Okay, then you are going to fold back and forth, alternating. So one's going to go to the right and one's going to go to the left. I taught pre-K and kindergarten. They did have to have help with this, but after I showed them the first time, they got it very quickly. So go back and forth on the spine of your book, all the way down. All right, and then you've got your very first book with your pages so that you can take notes and remember this exact session. I do have make and take workshops that I provide. They are actually on our YouTube channel, which we will share later also, but this is one of the books. And so I just want you to put the quick title with puppets and cooking with children's literature so that you have something to remember this session by. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quietly get my first friend. Are you ready? Hey. So let's get started. You're going to see why I love to use puppets. My friend Mighty is going to be the very first puppet that I pull out. He lives in this little plastic sack. And if you listen and you watch carefully, you can see that he's moving around, okay? So this is my friend Mighty. Come on out, Mighty. He hasn't been out for a while. So we have to be very quiet when he comes out. He doesn't like a lot of noise, okay? I brought him out a lot in my classroom. We know that mice are always quiet and you don't usually know that they're there. So I brought him out for various reasons. I welcomed my students at the beginning of the year. Sometimes I would get him out so everyone would quiet down. And I used him to also introduce lessons, to do thematic units, or really honestly, just whatever you choose. So he is meeting all of you and he is super excited to be here. So one of the very first books that I would read in the spring that I love to use with Mighty is Mouse's First Spring. But as you know, there are tons of books that we can use with mice, correct? So I'm just showing you how you can introduce your puppets. I'm showing you that you can use them as classroom management. And I'm going to show you some different books that you can use them with. But you can use them with any book. This is just one of my favorites to use Mighty with, okay? So we would read the book and we would talk about spring and we would go on a spring hunt and we would put spring items into our spring box that was in our science center. And there were so many words that we could talk about in the book, okay? And Mighty would help us put them on the word wall, wouldn't you, Mighty? Okay? So we would talk about wind and butterflies and snails and birds and frogs and worms and flowers. And these are just some of the things that we would hunt for. But Mighty and I are super close friends and all the students really, really enjoy him. So he is my first puppet. He was actually bought off of Amazon and he can live in any house you want him to live in. So I'm gonna put him away now. And let's move on to our next ones. So these are some special days that Mighty might come out and visit with us. Okay, there's special days, there's writing the daily message, and I also had a mascot, a classroom mascot. Her name was Frida Frog. She came out and wrote messages to the class when I'm introducing new skills, and even help writing with prompts. And so these are just a few things that Mighty does during the year that the students really enjoy seeing him come out and about. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about are my finger puppets. Your finger puppets can live in anything. So mine live in this red basket, but then that basket is broken down into a little suitcase, into a little heart box, and then the big ones just live down inside of here. I want to talk about this first one. These are called the eyeball puppets. So if I'm in a live presentation, I would actually hand out everybody an eyeball puppet to take home. They live in this little suitcase. So I would take my eyeball puppet out and I would teach everybody how to put it on their finger. And then what you do is you have your hair thing to dress it up. So here is my eyeball puppet. And we get along good, won't we? Yes, we really do. So these are the ones that I buy the children. They are smaller. These fit right on their fingers. These are one of the very favorite puppets that they use during the year. So the big ones are bought from Amazon, the small ones are bought from Amazon, and you can do anything that you want with these eyeball puppets. You will also see that I put just scrunchie around children's hands. So this is my first hand puppet that I used a lot, and one of my favorites because it's so engaging, okay? The next ones are gonna come out of this fun box. And the children's love to see which puppet you're gonna pull out of the box. So my first finger puppet is Mr. Turtle. You can use him on any turtle books you use. And as we know, there are a bunch of early childhood turtle books. He can live and come out of the box. He can live in this box. He can live in a sack like I had him. But the children love to see these come out. Think back to when you were a child. If you saw puppets, you just thought that they were magical. Here is my king puppet for if I'm doing any king or studying the letter K. I use this fingernail as a pointer, and I use it a lot actually, and my students all have one. And in a face-to-face conference, I would also give out this type of thing so that we could practice on how we can use this in the classroom. A couple more hand puppets would be my dinosaur, and I use this one with my Dino series. He's really easy to put on. He's fun to look at. He feels really sticky and just real pliable, so the kids can touch him. They love this hand puppet. And then I've got one more, which is my elephant. And when I am pulling them out, I'm a lot more careful with the children, just so that they can't see and it's a surprise where they're coming from. And I actually use this one with the book Oliver's Tree. And it's a super cute book. But all of these can be bought off Amazon. I've collected puppets now since 2003. That's how long I've been teaching. So I have lots of them to share with you. But these are my hand puppets and my finger puppets. And you know, if you're getting ready to start school, this might be a great place for you to start because they're easier and a lot of times cheaper to collect. And then you just carry this around with you and it has a home in your classroom and the students know where they live. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to set up your classroom or your daycare or your center library. Classroom libraries are an important part of your classroom. I had a children's library. I had a library for centers. I had a family library that families could come and check out resources for home. And then I had my own teacher library. My classroom library was large. I would collect from Scholastic. I had all books by theme and then in alphabetical order. So from A to Z, I would have my books by theme so that I could pull them very quickly. So the classroom library should be full of books that children can read at school and check out to take home. We must remember that not all children have books to take home. So we need to ensure that we give them that opportunity to learn to love to read. It would be up to you if you sent home a puppet with the books and or activities. You may not want to, especially during illnesses like we're going through the pandemic right now, and they can get expensive. So you may not get those puppets back. You do have to remember that. Okay, so I'm going to share with you just really quickly. So I have S books here. So I'm just going to give you an example. Here are my sign language books. I did a lot of sign language in my classroom. I took ASL for my foreign language in college. So I have my sign language books, and then I have my shark books. All of these in my classroom library would all be under the letter S, and I would know where to grab them if I was going to do a shark theme or the letter S for shark, and then I would just pull them out as needed. And so that's how it worked best for me in my classroom library. I'm sure that some of you have other ways that you put your classroom library together, and that is completely fine. Do what works for you. I just wanted to tell you what worked for me and how it worked for me. And it was really easy for me just to walk right over and pull those books for my thematic units and or for the different things that I was teaching, the letters and things. All right. So moving on to the next, I wanted to talk about a puppetry, and I could not for the life of me find my pictures of my own classroom of my puppetry, which I just adored. So I had to find some examples, which is completely fine. My puppetry was really tall. I had it made, and I just had it filled with lots of puppets. And the puppets that were on puppetry, the students could not take home. But then I had a child puppetry that was this size that they could use at centers and that they really enjoyed. So I had puppets that only I used, like I said, to keep clean and keep them ready for each year because they are expensive. And that I wanted them to go with the books that I already had. And then the children had their own, and then I would send some of these home in family learning bags and things like that. And a lot of times I would get families to donate puppets or donate the money for the puppets. And I wanted the children to be able to use those because you're going to learn in just a minute how much puppets really do for your students and what you can do with them. So these are the types of puppets. And when you're choosing puppets for your classroom, you want to think about which ones you will use the most. Which ones go with the lessons you will teach? How easy are they to operate and incorporate into your lessons or your reading? And can you make them look real and engaged? How engaged are your students going to be with these puppets? And these are the different types of puppets. And you can see in the red what kind of puppet it is. And then where I got the picture in case you want to go back. So it starts with shadow, and we go to finger puppets and rod puppets, and then we go clear to ventriloquists. I never tried to be a ventriloquist in my classroom, but I did want students to think that these puppets were real and engaging. So I just bought puppets that I knew. I had many books. For example, insects, dinosaurs, bears, snakes, butterflies, things like that. I wanted to get the most for the money that I was spending and could pull them out for several different times and several different things. Okay, so where can you buy puppets, right? You might be asking yourself that. I bought my own puppets. I collected them from stores like Amazon, Mardell, any teaching store. I looked at garage sales. Of course, they had to be washed. Teachers that were retiring that had puppets. I had also been to some professional development where they sold puppets, and I attended puppet training and puppet sessions. And that's where I grew to love puppets, is that puppet professional development that I went to, and they showed us how to use them, why to use them, and how to really engage students. So you can get puppets many places, but again, I would make sure that you are keeping those for yourself, and then you have some for your children to use also. So the next big thing, why do we use children's literature when we are teaching, right? Children's literature covers so many types of text, from picture books to biographies. It empowers children, it motivates thinking, and enhances language, it promotes cognitive development. I could go on, and we all know this as early childhood professionals. Children not only become involved in the story, but they connect with the characters. If children love to read, their comprehension's higher, their vocabulary is extended, and their fluency becomes more evident in when they start reading to us. And books are fun. We know that books are engaging, and children love to read at any age. I'm 41 and I still love to read. I am reading a book right now. When I was in high school and middle school, I would probably not have said that, but you go back to love to learn to read. And as early childhood professionals, we are the ones that can teach them to love to read. Children's Lit covers so many topics and themes, and as teachers, we can use books to enrich our curriculum and our lessons. By using puppets, students are more apt to get involved in the reading and learning. So it's all coming together. I hope that you're understanding that when you use children's literature and you add puppets with that children just are more engaged. They have more imaginations. They can really point things out in the story. And if you have to start out with one puppet for the year, that's okay. It's okay to have one puppet. You can always start collecting. It's just so magical to watch the students change when you pull that puppet out. All right, why use puppets in the classroom, which I just kind of talked about. Puppets offer children an engaging way to interact and explore their knowledge and understanding of the world. So for instance, when a child is able to talk through a puppet, suddenly it isn't so scary anymore. You can think about that even as an adult. For many children, it opens up a new world of communication that supports language skills. So puppets provide that sense of security that makes it easier for children to express their thoughts and their feelings, and they might not otherwise be comfortable to share those things. So it allows children to develop empathy when children are encouraged to take on the roles of others, like a dinosaur or a chef or a cook. They learn to empathize, they learn to know what other people are thinking and what other people want to say, and they learn to respect the feelings of other people. So puppets can be used to support oral language. It's also helpful to ask them open-ended questions and let them talk through the puppet. When children are able to play with puppets, a new world opens up where they can be anyone they want. One day, their puppet might be a superhero that's on a mission to save the world. And the next day, it might be a bird that has to fly south for the winter. You just never know. There's so many things that children can do with puppets. Okay. So cooking with my students and using children's literature is probably one of my favorite ways to bring Children's Lit alive. So as you teach these lessons, you are teaching your students how to follow directions, apply math and science, literacy and writing, sequencing, vocabulary, problem solving, social skills. I know that we can just go on and on. And so for those of you who cook with your students, you know why you cook with your students, and you know how it helps. And if you go and you look at children's literature, you know that so many books for children have food in them, have things like up at the top, you can see that there's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That doesn't really have anything to do probably with cooking, but you can turn it into that and have students role play and set up a store and have them make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then you sell it. And then how do you make the money, and where do you buy the ingredients? There are just so many things that you can do with cooking and children's literature, and you can use your puppets. So it just enriches your curriculum, and it really helps you bring the children's lit alive. So cooking with your students is a life skill that also helps with math, science, language, social emotional development, physical development, fine motor, cognitive. And at the same time, you're making those memories and you're getting to know your students. So it's really important that we allow those students to do this. And we know that students aren't really cooking at home anymore. Their parents aren't even cooking at home. So if we can plan these cooking activities around what children like to eat, but teach them about healthy eating and have them bring things to try, they may not get to do that. So I wanted to share this with you. This is my website, my early childhood website. And there are different sections, and I will share with you at the end my website link. So since this was one of my favorite things to do, you will find a lot of recipes on my website. You'll just click on the classroom mascot and you'll scroll all the way to the bottom. I just can't, if you haven't cooked with children, I can't tell you how much fun it is. So I love to find a good book, read it, and then cook something that everyone will enjoy and learn from. A short story is that my second grade teacher did all of this. And I think that's where I learned to love to do this also. She would read a book and then we would try a new food, or we would cook something in the classroom. And there were so many times that I went home and I wanted my mom to make those things with me. So on my website, for every letter of the alphabet, you will find things that you can cook with that letter. So I will share that with you at the end. It's a great place to get easy things to cook with young children. Okay, here are some books that I use to cook with. And these are just a few. So Green Eggs and Ham during Dr. Seuss Week, it's probably my favorite. The students love it and the families love to come in on these special days. So again, with cooking, you can really involve those families in the time and get them into your classroom because they want to come in and see what their children are doing too. And you can use them as volunteers to help in the cooking center when you're doing something else. And there could be more than one activity going on. So I try to cook at least every other week on Fridays, if the time permits, in my classroom. And I do have it okayed with my principal. So it is one of the days that my students look most forward to. So that's what we're trying to get students. We want students to love to learn, love to read, love to engage, come to school. And if you can pick up these little things and enrich your curriculum with cooking, with puppets, with role play, with anything that you decide helps with thematic units, integrated units, anything that interests them, that's what we want our students to love to come to school. We want them to love learning. That is our job as early childhood professionals, to make students love it. So this is just one way that you can do that. And it brings the parents in also. Okay, I want to start out and I want to share with you. So if I'm doing a face-to-face conference, I would have these things out. I would have teachers practicing with the puppets. They would teach us a lesson. They would write a lesson with their puppets. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to show you all of this. This is all on my website. I want you to be able to take some of the things that you might already have and make it your own. So the first one is The Old Lady Who Swallowed the Fly. And who doesn't love this book? And there are hundreds of different versions of The Old Lady Who Swallowed the Fly, right? So you will see on here some pictures. The old lady who swallowed a snowflake, the old lady who swallowed the pie. So you can make ice cream. You can make pumpkin pie in a baggie. The old lady who swallowed a candy cane and make candy canes. But this book teaches sequencing, rhyming, predictable patterns, retelling, role play, and the students' example for using. There will be environmental print that you can talk about. So I want to jump in real quick and just show you how these puppets work. So this is one of them, and she actually eats the different things. So as you sequence, or as the students sequence, here's the spider. So all of these things come out. Here is the cat. And then they, as you read the book, the students get to put in her mouth what she has eaten, okay? It is the same thing for this lady who swallowed the fly. She's my big puppet. I love her so much. she has all of the things down in here. So here's the horse. And so this was one of my students' favorites. Here's the spider. Just one of their favorite puppets because they could actually interact with me while I was reading the book. And again, we know that there's tons of these books and the way that you can interact with them. But if you want to use, I have the old lady who, you can use her as the old lady who swallowed the fly or Old Mother Hubbard. So I have her here. And if you can see that how I used environmental print at the bottom, you can see that I had the Captain Crunch cereal box, but you can do several behind them. So it would be Old Mother Hubbard went to her cupboard to get her poor dog a bone. But when she got there, the cupboard was bare. And so the poor dog had, and you open up the cupboard and they can say, Captain Crunch. So this is teaching environmental print along with Old Mother Hubbard or the old lady who swallowed the fly. But again, you can use this to engage them and then use the hands-on environmental print to further that engagement. Okay, my next idea is the Ladybug Girl. I use this when I would teach about bugs. We would teach about fiction. You could use it with the color red. And there's so many things that you can do. So I have the finger puppet for the Ladybug Girl or any Ladybug theme or book you're using. And then I also have the Ladybug hand puppet, which is really cool because your fingers go down in here. You can also do this when you're talking about insects and spiders, but these are two really fun hand puppets and finger puppets that you can use. Along with talking about that, cooking with the grouchy ladybug or the ladybug girl, you can make strawberries and put chocolate on them. You can take Oreos and cover them in red. So almost every single book, whether it has food in it or not, you can make something out of it. And going back to my website, that is how you can find different recipes like this that's super easy to use with young children. It'll make it fun for them, and it makes them remember that book more. Okay, this next one is really fun. This is Miss Honey's hat, and I would use this and the puppet while I taught the letter H. We would all make a hat or bring a hat from home. And in this book, she has a tea party with her friends. They eat cake. And then there's an opportunity for you to make little cakes, have a tea party, wear your hats, invite the families, and then making a character mobile. Okay, so here is Miss Honey's hat. Here she is. She is super fun. And you can actually take off her hat. And then the character mobile is really fun. I would have made this with my 4-year-olds and my kindergarten, and we would have gotten a hanger and then done the different characteristics of her, things that happened in her book, and because it would have taken a long time. But if you have older students, 2nd or 3rd, they could make their own character model and mobile. So here is Miss Honey's hat. She is super cute and she's fun to use in the classroom also. All right, moving on. Switch slides here. Okay, my monster book. This was one of the favorites for my students. And I would use these with the letter M, or when it was Halloween, we would talk about fiction and nonfiction, real and make-believe. So let me grab it. This puppet is super fun if you have the opportunity to get him. There's one of the monster books that's about the face. And so this entire face comes off. And so you add the eyes and you take away the eyes, and then you talk about how scary the monster is. And my students loved this one again because they could interact with it. And it went with Go Away, Big Green Monster. So that was just one of them. But there's also, there was an old monster who swallowed lots of nasty things in this book, like tarantulas and things like that. Glad monster, sad monster. There's so many. There's a whole thing of these books that you can use. So that's what I mean about having several books. And then you have this one hand puppet that can go with several books. So to me, this was worth the money because I could use several books with one puppet. All right, the next one, this one's a fun one. My students love this one. This is about going to the dentist. So we did community helpers in my classroom. And we talked about jobs. So the dentist was a big one. And I wanted to teach about the dentist because of fears. My students were all kind of feared the doctor because they had older siblings that would talk about it. So I had this big mouth and a huge toothbrush that goes with it. And this is the dentist book that I used. And I had children that begged to practice with their floss. We would actually floss and we would brush. And this is an actual mouth. And I got this at Lakeshore. So these can be bought at a teaching store. And then there's lots of different dentist books, but the open wide one is the best. It's funny. Students love it. And it does come with a big toothbrush and some floss that you can have them use. So I don't know if you would consider this a puppet, but I did want to share this because it's a fun one to have in your classroom and it really helps students. And I know at a lot of centers, students actually brush their teeth. So using this to practice is something that's really cool. And I did use this with my thematic unit, like it says, in a role playing. You can role play your dentist. You can set up a center as a dentist office. There's so many different things that you can do with this. All right, the next one might be one of my very favorite books. I'm sure you've read this book or have heard of it. And if not, it's a must read. It is The Napping House. You'll hear me say this a lot, but there are so many great children's books out there. For this one, I did a lot of sequencing. If you read it, you would understand. I used my lap felt boards, and I actually let them use these at centers also. So this book teaches repetitive text, sequencing, and cause and effect. You can talk about synonyms. There's so many things that you can do with this. So I would take out my felt board, and then in this one, it's about a grandma who goes to sleep, and then all of these people come and they just fall on top of her in the bed, and the students just think it's hilarious. So this is not a puppet, but I did use my felt board with all of my different things often. Because if they're sequencing, the students like to have these. And it would be really cool if you could have small groups, and the small groups could each be a different character or a different thing, and then they could add it as you read the book. So as we know, children like to read the same book. So I might start on Monday and read the book 4 different times. So you could do 4 different activities, and this might be your last one because they know exactly how it's going to happen and exactly what's going to come next. So The Napping House, if you do not have that one, I do suggest that that goes into your collection. It is such a fun book, and it is one that the students really, really enjoy. All right, the next one. Who doesn't know about The Very Hungry Caterpillar or Eric Carle in general? There's so many lessons that you can do with this, and all of Eric Carle's books are fun and engaging. So for this one, there's so much vocab to teach. You can have a real life puppet that eats through all of the grapevines in the books. You can definitely cook and eat with this book, as we know. The teacher has the opportunity to do some very fun and engaging hands-on things when reading this. If you did this in the spring, you could also have butterflies hatch and watch them grow through each stage, which I've actually done. And I grabbed this. So I did, when I was teaching kindergarten, we would have butterfly, and then we would let them go after they came out of their chrysalis. So here it is, and here is my hand puppet for my butterfly. There are several that you can actually get with this book, and it will do the entire thing as it goes through the book. So that would be another good one because we use The Very Hungry Caterpillar a lot, but then you could also pull out this butterfly and use it for butterfly books. So I always, again, tried to think about how could I use this with a different book and make it worth my money, because you know, as teachers, we spend lots of our own money, so we want to make it worth our while. All right, moving on. Big Bugs. This is a pop-up book. I used this as when I was doing bugs and insects for my thematic unit. I also, I use finger puppets with these, and so children can also use them because they love this book. This book is so fun. If you do not have it, it might be one that you need to get too, because it has giant pop-ups that. And so there again, I can bring out my ladybug. But what I did is I got on Amazon, or you can get these at education stores. And so I have my 2 grasshopper, and I've got my ladybug. So you could do some bugs, you could do some insects, you could do some spiders, and then children had to group these. You can also use these for sorting. They are finger puppets, but you can use them for sorting in your classroom with colors or bugs, insects, spiders, the different legs. So there's so many things that you can do with this book. And this is one of their favorites. Any pop-up book was one of my students' favorite books. So if you do not have that book, it might be one that you want to grab if you can. So let's talk about family learning bags for just a second. These are bags that can be sent home with children for families to share, or they can be kept at school for students to enjoy. So the bags can be themed or have different objectives you may be working on in your classroom. Many times these bags will have a book and then a short activity or an assignment to practice a lesson that you may have previously taught. I always make sure that my parents know about the book bags and what they are, that they are not mandatory. I did these in place of homework, and so they were still covering the same theme, they were still covering the same lessons, but it was something the families could do together. The book bags can help families get involved. They teach responsibility. They can teach whatever skill you want them to teach. So this also helps teachers differentiate lessons for different students. So if you don't have time to get to it that day, you could also send a bag home with the student and differentiate for whatever level that student is on, whether it be below level or above. So I love family learning bags. Here's just some different ideas that you can do. I liked to include games. So I would put Connect 4 in there, Candyland. I put disposable cameras in there. Students haven't even seen disposable cameras sometimes. So you can put your book in there with your puppets. I put recipes, materials, and then I would ask the grocery store if I was going to put a cooking recipe in there. I would ask them to donate some of the material, because you have to remember the parents probably won't have this at home. If I was going to ask them to do cutting or gluing or use tape, I would send all of those home with them too. So when they get home, they should be able to engage in family time, playtime, and even extracurricular activities that teach them about socializing and organization. And they shouldn't have to sit at home and do so much homework. But these bags make the students really excited. And I had students beg me to be able to take a bag home. So my favorite thing about the learning bag is that there's something you can do all together. You can send these home, and the students just love it, and they love working with their families. If you're going to send out a cooking bag, there's so many things that it can teach, but like stirring, reading the recipe, preparing the cooking space, cleaning as you go, adding ingredients, assembling things, even a pizza, pouring things, measuring. There's so many things for that family cooking bag. And the families really came to love it. And it's really about building that relationship with the families and asking them what their interests are. And, you know, even asking them, do you have time to do a cooking bag or a family bag this week? If not, that's okay. We can do yours at school, and then you can do it another week. All right, I'm going to move right on to make and take books to use with your students. We did one at the beginning that was called a snip snap book, where you tore all the way down the spine. And you can find more make and take books on my website at busyclassroom.weebly.com, which I will share in just a little bit. But there are so many on there that you can do that teach skills, that get students engaged, and are really exciting to use in your classroom. You can see on here I have a baggie book that they can take in the bathtub with them. I have a money book. I have a jack-o'-lantern book. I have an environmental print book. I was always collecting fun plates and fun napkins, because you can make books out of those. You can make books out of gift sacks. So you will find all of those things on our YouTube channel and on the website that I will share with you after. Here's some more make and take books and just some examples of things that you can do and how you can use them and why they're important. And it really gives the student the ownership, because they've made that book. All right, so puppets used as pointers. There's lots of reasons we know as early childhood teachers that we use pointers, correct? But I like to use different kinds of pointers. Here's one of my pointers. We have several different kinds that you can use, and you can use finger puppets as pointers. You can see those down there. You see butterflies and insects. But let's not forget about the pointers and how they help us read. We can use little tiny pointers like the finger pointer to read to children and show them how to follow along. But these big pointers can do things like the word wall if you're putting words up from the book that you've read. So he can also be used as a puppet, but he's also used as one of my pointers. All right, moving to the next slide. All right, I wanted to share these books with you. I used these when I was teaching gifted and talented 3rd through 6th, but these could for sure be used in a regular classroom. These could for sure be used with 2nd graders. I don't know that I would go any lower than 2nd grade. I used them with my 2nd and 3rd graders, but these are called Stories with Holes. These books are so much fun. They're so engaging. You will truly not be able to put them down because your students won't let you. They will find you at the grocery store and say, I think I know what it is. It is a great time filler if you have 5 minutes before you go to lunch or 2 minutes before you go. And it's all about the story and your students asking you questions and getting them involved and making them think. And my students would even go home and ask their families, what are some things that you think this could be? But if you have not heard of these stories and you are teaching, you could probably start at the end of 1st grade, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and all the way up, even into high school. These books are amazing, and I wanted to make sure that I did not leave here without telling you about them today because I love them, the students love them, and they're something that you can really use to get students engaged. Okay, so I wanted to add this slide. This is a lot of words. This is being recorded, so you can go back to this, but I wanted you to be able to screenshot this because these are some very fun things you can do with children's literature. And in some or most, you could incorporate puppets and some cooking. And for very small children, you would have to change these up a little bit, but they're still fun and engaging. So I wanted you to have just some different things that you could do. So if you want to take a picture of this real quick with your phone, that is completely fine. I'll give you just a second because I do want you to have the opportunity to have these. All right, let's move on. Okay, I want to share with you some puppets that I use that I didn't get to share with you. And I know we're running out of time, so I'm gonna have to hurry. This is a fun one. This is my alligator puppet. And again, you can use him for many books. So this is just one that I wanted to share in case you're getting an idea of some that I bought that I used over and over because of the amount of books that you have. This is a super fun one. This is a baby owl. And you know, you can set something here and have him up on top of it. And inside the owl is a little turnstick. So I can make him look all around the classroom. So there's lots of things that I can teach with him. And then here is his mama. And his mama is very cool too. And she even blinks her eyes. But do you see how cool these can be if you are using them in your classroom and children are totally engaged? And she's a big one. The students loved her. To move on to a more fun puppet, if I was doing something fun, she's a fun one that I have. So students loved her. She actually makes a sound, but that's only if you push down. So she's a fun one. And one last one, I have a lot, but these are all I have time to share today, is my porcupine. And he's super fun also. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared those with you so you could get some different ideas on puppets to use. I wanted to share one more book. I'm out of time because I want to take questions and get ideas, but this is called First Day Jitters. If you don't have this book is stellar. I was going to read it to you, but I'll let you look it up on your own. If you have read it, you know how funny it is and the students love it. If you haven't read it, this is a must for your children's library. This is my website. If you want to take a screenshot of it real quick, it's busyclassroom.weebly.com. All of my contact information is there. I am up for helping you put together lessons, finding cooking. If you can't find something on my website, shoot me a text message. My phone number is also on there. You're welcome to text me and ask where things are. I think that it's important for professionals like us to engage with each other and to share lessons, because why reinvent the wheel? So I want to thank you so much for coming today. And I want to open the floor for questions, comments, concerns, things that you do in your classroom, that you're doing cooking, that you're doing family bags, that you're doing any type of lesson. I want to hear all about that. And everybody here, that's why we're at this conference, is to get great professional development. School's getting ready to start. And as we know, some of us are going virtual. How cool would it be to have these puppets while you're doing your Google Meet or your Zoom meeting with your students, to find them and to get them engaged? So I am finished now, and I want to take any questions or ideas that you have so your peers can actually learn from that also.
Wow, Dr. Shipley, amazing. I can't tell you how my mind just went to so many different activities in the literacy process that can be used with puppets. So such a cool opener. I did open the chat, so I'm hoping that our participants can see the chat. While I am monitoring that, I'm going to go ahead and put a file in the chat, which is the professional development certificate for this particular session. So you'll notice the title on there is the title of Dr. Shipley's session. And what you will go ahead and do is print your participant name in there on your own when you print it out. So you should have a nice individualized certificate for each session that you attend. I am not sure that the chat is working, so let's try that.
It says it's private, so we may need to open that up, and I'm also going to stop the recording now.